So I found out that some of my wife's students found my YouTube channel, which is really cool. And if you're watching and you want to annoy her just a little bit, ask her what the neurological process that causes brain freeze is. Or ask her what is the neurological process that causes brain freeze. She will absolutely hate it, and it'll make me laugh. Hey everybody, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be talking about 5 decks that you should really consider playing if you're going to a major event, a 1K, a regional, EUIC or NAIC, something like that. And before we get into them, I want to make one quick disclaimer, and that is, these are just my opinions, right? If the deck that you want to play or your favorite deck is not in this top 5 list, that doesn't mean it's a bad pick. It doesn't mean you're going to do poorly with it. It doesn't mean anything. It just means it's not one of the ones I picked, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, the deck that I'm playing in an upcoming tournament is not in this list. It's not. These are just 5 decks. There are plenty of good decks in this format. Arceus can make a lot of good decks.
Well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
Keep that in mind. And before we get into the video, of course, if you haven't already, subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of stuff tells YouTube this is a good channel and other people should watch it. If you're in the market for some TCG accessories, I am now affiliated with Dragon Shield. That means you can use the link in the video description to get yourself some awesome Dragon Shield matte sleeves. They're the only ones I use. You show up to regionals looking and feeling like a pro. If you use the link, I get a kickback, which means I can make more and better videos for you guys. Finally, if you want to help support the channel a little bit more directly, there is a membership option. You can click the join button to see all the different perks you get, but none of that is ever expected. Just you being here watching is enough for me. Now, with all that out of the way, let's pop over to PTCGO where we can take a look at some really good decks. So we're not going to be doing this in any real order, just the order of the decks that I want to talk about them in. I wouldn't say that any of these are necessarily better than the others. Every single deck is going to have their pros and cons, and I want to start talking about Arceus Bird Box. Why is it called Bird Box? Well, our main attackers are Arceus and a bunch of different birds. So the whole idea here is to use Arceus to use Trinity Nova, use Trinity Charge, get some damage onto your opponent's active, start powering up our birds, whether it's Moltres or Zapdos V. Remember, Trinity Charge and Trinity Nova only go to Pokemon V, so I cannot power up a Galarian Moltres. This one, I can only power up Galarian Moltres V or my Zapdos V. In theory, I could power up Lumineon, and I can also power up Arceus itself if I want to, other Arceus, things like that. Starbirth is a once per game ability that lets us search our deck for any 2 cards that we want, put them into our hand. It's extremely powerful, and the idea of this deck is to counter the meta, right? There's a lot of Psychic decks. Mew is very, very popular, and spoilers, it's on this list. To no one's surprise, Mew is weak Dark, and so we have our Baby Moltres and our Moltres V as our Dark type attackers to help deal with things like Mew. We have Galarian Zapdos V to help take one-shots on Arceus V-Star, which is weak to fighting Gengar, Jolteon, decks that are very, very popular, and Galarian Zapdos V is going to take a one-shot on all of those Pokemon that we just mentioned. It'll even one-shot Eternatus VMAX, as long as it doesn't have a big charm or something like that onto it. We take one-shots on everything, and what makes this so useful is that Fighting Instinct is a great ability. Our attacks cost 1 less colorless to play for each V-type Pokemon our opponent has in play. So if they're smart, they will try to limit it to 1 or 2 Vs so that we still have a attack of 2, maybe 3, depending on what deck they're playing. And so we have to be, as the player, conscious of 2 things. We have to be conscious of how many Vs our opponent has in play, and that will determine how much we need to really power up Galarian Zapdos. And 2, we have to be worried of, could they throw a path to the peak down? Something like the Jolteon is really good at doing, hitting you with that Marnie path. So if you only power up your Galarian Zapdos with 1 energy, being like, this is no problem, I'm going to be able to take a one-shot really easily because I only need the 1 fighting energy. If they throw a path down, this ability stops, and now you have an attack cost of 4, and you're not going to be able to attack. So make sure that you understand how much you actually have to power up your Zapdos. Galarian Moltres V is a little bit easier to power up because of the Dire Flame Wings ability, where you can take a Dark Energy from your discard and attach it directly to this Pokemon. Then you can attach one from the hand, and now you're just one short. So if you have a Raihan and 2 energies in the discard, this card could be powered up in a single turn. Arceus is really a good target for it to just hit it with 1 energy, because again, Dire Flame Wings plus manual attachment, and you're attacking pretty easily. So you can really spread your energies out well in this deck. Most of the time, you're going to have an attacker of choice. If you're going against Arceus decks or Gengar decks, Jolteon, you're going to want Zapdos V. If you're going against Mew, Dragon Ball, Shadow Rider, you're going to want the Galarian Moltres duo. We do have Arceus as a pretty good attacker. 280 health on a 2-prize Pokemon is pretty beefy, and Trinity Nova hitting for somewhere between 180 and 210 depending on damage modifiers is a really good attack. You're going to be 2-shotting everything in the game, and you could be knocking out most or a good amount of Pokemon V if you're hitting in that 230 threshold. So it's a really meant to just counter the deck. Now, we do have Bibarel with the Industrious Incisors ability, drawn so you have 5 cards in hand to help with a little bit of consistency. We do have Lumineon V with the Luminous Sign ability. When you play this card from your hand to the bench, search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand. This is great for finding that boss you need for game. This is great for finding a research if you are, low on cards or you don't have a particularly good hand. Raihan to power something up. It can help you find a Sherrin's Care so that you can pull your Arceus, a damaged Arceus, from the field back into your hand so that it doesn't get knocked out the following turn. Clara to get some energies and Pokemon back from the discard. There's a lot of applications for Lumineon. Finally, Pumpkaboo is something that I added to this deck that I didn't really see very commonly in Arceus decks, especially Arceus Bird decks. Every Pokemon in our deck essentially is a V-type and has abilities, which means Path to the Peak is going to really put a stranglehold on this deck. No Starburst, no Dire Flame Wings, no Fighting Instinct, no Luminous Sign. I mean, if you don't have a Stadium in hand or are able to draw into one, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So Pumpkaboo being a basic Pokemon means we can search it very easily with Ultra Ball or Quick Ball and get that Stadium out of there so our abilities come back into effect. So Pumpkin Pit, when you play this card from your hand to the bench, discard a Stadium in play. And this is really useful at times. There are going to be times where Pumpkaboo is not useful at all, especially if your opponent's not playing a Path deck or if you don't have to get rid of your opponent's Stadium. But the searchable Stadium discard is more valuable than I think some people give it credit for. And I think that's pretty much it. The rest of the deck is fairly simple. We have, for all these decks, there's going to be deck profiles either on my channel or someone else. So if you want to see how it's played, then you can and should go check them out. But I just kind of wanted to talk about the general strategy, give an overview of the deck list. Air Balloon, Choice Belt, a bunch of double turbo energies, some dark and fighting energies. You could probably change the energies. Maybe you don't even need this much. Maybe you just use 3 fighting energies and you get another Sherrin's Care, you get a Pal Pad, you get an Eldegoss V, so you can get a supporter from the discard back into your hand. You can really tech this deck, and that's one of the things I like about it so much, and I want to spend so much time talking about it, is you can really tech this deck to play the way you want it, depending on what you think you're going to see or what you've seen in the past. Really useful deck. You don't have to run the Bibarel line. You can run a 3-4 of Arceus V and V-Star, get a 4th double turbo energy, and then you have an extra slot for something else. Maybe you want a second Moltres, maybe you want a second Clara. Again, Pal Pad, Eldegoss V. You can really move this deck around. I don't think you necessarily want a Dunsparce, because we're using Zapdos V to take knockouts on colorless Pokemon very easily. And so if you have a Dunsparce, you're taking away your own ability to take one-shots on things like Arceus. So I don't think it's particularly helpful. Could you hit an Arceus, take the KO, and then on your next turn throw a Dunsparce down so that they're less likely to knock out yours? Yeah, but the decks that are really worried about fighting weakness are probably going to play a Dunsparce anyway, so I don't think it's super needed. Training Court's a pretty good Stadium to get energies back that we might have to discard. And then we also have Collapse Stadium, where you can't have more than 4 bench Pokemon. This is a good way of getting rid of liabilities on your side of the bench. You do have that Eldegoss, you do have that Lumineon in play. and you're afraid that it's going to get boss KO'd, Mew's going to easily take advantage of it, you throw down that Collapse Stadium and you get rid of it. This is a good way also to deal with Suicune decks, Mew decks. It's going to help with any type of Inteleon deck because they want to fill their bench out as much as they can. And now you're going to limit the amount of resources that they have available to them because they're smaller bench size. So that's pretty much this deck. And we'll move on to the next one. We can't have a top tier list without talking about a deck that has won regionals. And this Gengar Arceus deck won the Salt Lake City regionals. Again, its whole premise is to use Arceus as an initial attacker, help power up Gengars, and then use those Gengars to take really big one-shots on Pokemon V, V-Stars, even some V-Maxes, and really punish Mew players. So we have Hyper Potion here because we can get rid of some energies in play to heal a Pokemon because we know we're going to be able to power them back up with something like an Arceus. We know that we're going to be able to use Raihan to accelerate energies. We have double turbo energy onto that Arceus if we need to heal it. There's a lot of ways we can use this Hyper Potion. We also run Collapse Stadium for the same reason. Tool Scrapper to get rid of opposing Choice Belts, Big Charms, Capes, things like that to make it all things that, especially Capes and Big Charms, things that might make it a little bit harder for us to take a knockout. Remember, in this version of the deck, Gmax Swallow is going to be doing max 280 with the Choice Belt because we don't have any single strike energies to power this up. Could you run the Gengar Houndoom version? Absolutely. I think either is honestly fine. I just picked this one because it did win a regional. But yeah, the same premise. Use Arceus for the reasons we just talked about. Use Bibarel to draw, and then now your attacker is Gengar. 320 health is pretty thick. Fear and Panic is going to really punish Mew players. And Mew is still an extremely popular deck. So for just 2 energies, you are really able to put a hurting on Mew decks because Fear and Panic is going to do a ton of damage since they have all their Mews and Genesects. Ignore the fact that I don't actually have any Jolteon V or V Maxes. The plan is still the same. We want to use Jolteon V Maxes Max Thunder Rumble attack for just a lightning and a colorless energy. It does 100 damage to the active. And if your opponent's bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, you can pick one of those damaged Pokemon and do an additional 100 damage to them. Now, some people might be worried about Manaphy, but honestly, Manaphy is not as common as you think it might be. I think initially the fear or threat of Manaphy really putting a lot of pressure or difficulties for decks like Jolteon, Rapid Strike, Urshifu kind of kept those decks down a little bit, but no one's really playing Manaphy, not that much anyway. So you can probably get away with playing Jolteon. I still think it's a very good deck. You have the Shady Dealings Inteleon line where you can, when you evolve, search your deck for any trainer card you want. If you evolve into Drizzile, and if you evolve into Inteleon, you get to search your deck for any 2 trainer cards. Very, very powerful. You run a bunch of Drizziles, a lot of Pokemon search, so you're able to find the cards you need very easily. We do have quick shooting Inteleons to put a little bit of extra damage onto a Pokemon. Say we have a bench Pokemon we need to damage, or there's an active Pokemon that we've attacked twice. Now we can start putting a lot of pressure and taking some knockouts with quick shooting. Not only does it have free retreat, making it easy to cycle through these Pokemon, but you do run a couple of copies of Cheryl so that you can just discard all the energy from your Jolteon VMAX, completely heal it, and then start attacking pretty easily because Elemental Badge, all you have to do is throw in a badge on there, and now your attacks cost 1 colorless less, which means you're attacking for just 1 lightning energy. And as you can see, we run a few lightning energies, so the odds of you finding one are pretty good. We do have an energy search to get that lightning energy, and the Shady Dealing line to find the energy search. So there's a lot of tutoring in this deck. There's a lot of very targeted search, and we really just can put a lot of pressure very quickly. We can attack very, very fast. We can set up backup attackers very, very quickly. You do Marnie Path pretty frequently, and it is a portion of this deck's gameplay to just kind of stop your opponent from playing when possible. Remember, Path to the Peak turns off abilities for any Pokemon that has a rule box. That includes all Pokemon V, V-Star, V-Max, GX, and soon to come Radiant Pokemon, because yes, those do have a rule box. So that's this deck's main strategy. You have a couple of bosses so that if you have a Pokemon that is already damaged in the active, you can boss up a non-damaged one so that you can still snipe the damaged one and hit the active instead of just hitting the active that was previously damaged, and really make things difficult for your opponent. Start taking easy knockouts on Sobbles and Drizzles to not only get prizes, but reduce your opponent's consistency as well. So a lot of positives to this deck, and I do think it is a very strong deck, worthy of at least including in this top 5 decks you should consider list. It's not a surprise that this list is going to be filled with Arceus decks when Arceus is proven to be very, very good. Again, 200 damage to the active, native, plus or minus any damage modifiers, 280 health, 2 prizes, an incredible ability, and the attack is also really good. It's not just a flat 200. Searching a deck for energies and powering up other attackers is very, very useful. We do in this deck run Dunsparce since our main attacker is just the Arceus. We don't want it to get one-shot by Zapdos really easily, so we have the Mysterious Nest ability on Dunsparce. Colorless Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponents have no weakness. And you can pair this with Tornadus actually. Tornadus is weak to lightning, and you won't get one-shot by a Zapdos because you actually have fighting resistance, and then you don't get double damage from things like Jolteon, for example. So it doesn't necessarily say it removes fighting weakness, it just means all colorless Pokemon have no weakness. And that is a little bit interesting and something to at least note. This deck does use Lumineon V to find supporters that we might want, and just like the last deck we looked at, we do have the Shady Dealings Inteleon line with a couple of quick shooters. And this is going to look a little bit more similar to, say, like a Rapids like Urshifu deck, or a Suicune deck, really any water type deck, because of the supporter count of things like Melanie. We have a bunch of water energies. We do have some Sharon's Care to, again, heal those damaged Arceus so that we can kind of cycle through them. This way, one Arceus V-Star is damaged in the active. You have an Arceus V on the bench, assuming it's powered up because you Trinity Charged, Trinity Nova'd. That damaged Arceus V-Star, you play Sharon's Care. All the cards that are attached to it go back to your hand, which means if you have a Choice Belt, the Choice Belt goes to your hand. If you need an energy to attach to the benched Arceus, or that would now become the active, you can do it. All the cards go with it. So, very powerful supporter. And then you just evolve the newly promoted Arceus V, and you have a fresh Arceus V-Star. It's a really good way to set your opponent back and really force them to take one-shots, or almost, I don't want to say waste a turn, but kind of waste a turn. We use things like Capacious Buckets to find those water energies. Again, Double Turbo energies are super useful. Scoop Up Nets to either move Pokemon out of the active or to double down on abilities like Shady Dealings and Quick Shooting. A pretty high Pokemon search count, Evolution Incense, Level Ball, Quick Balls, Ultra Balls. We have it all. A couple of Path to the Peaks. We don't want to pass too soon because we want to get our Starbirth off and maybe use our Lumineon. But once we do that, we are free to path, and we hope it sticks. It's a very, very powerful deck. I'm sure some don't run the Farfetch'd, but I do think the Farfetch'd is at least interesting enough to talk about. It's a basic Pokemon, Leak Slash for double turbo energy. It does 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So you attack with an Arceus V-Star. You hit for, let's just pretend, 200 damage to make math a little bit simple. You don't knock out the active, and now your Arceus V-Star gets knocked out. You don't have another one ready to go, or at least one that's powered up with energies. You can very easily just use this Farfetch, throw a double turbo energy on it, and now you're hitting for 200. It would be 220, but the double turbo energy reduces your attack by 20. So you're still hitting for 200, and by the way, no Pokemon has 400 health, so, or at least no Pokemon in play or that I know of has 400 health, so you're set, you're good to go. And I guess technically Honchkrow could have like a ton of HP if it has 4k but toughness attached to it. That's probably a thing, but no one's doing that, so you don't really have to worry too much. And even if you did have to worry about that, you're still taking the KO, so that's fun. And if you get a Choice Belt on there, you're hitting for 230. So I think Farfetch is interesting. You scoop up net the active. If it's an Inteleon, you promote it. You do have double turbo energies to help retreat a little bit easier. It's interesting. Again, does every list run it? No. Is it worth at least talking about? I think so. I mean, we have to, right? Like, it has to be here. I don't have any of the Pokemon. That's fine. Mew is a deck that you should consider because it's very, very good. Mew VMAX 310 health for just a double colorless energy, or even easier, you can, we'll talk about the ways you can accelerate energy, but it's very easy to power this thing up. Cross Fusion Strike, use one of your bench Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks as your own. Really powerful. You can use, if you have another bench Mew VMAX, you can use Max Miracle. It does 130 damage. It's able to hit through abilities, which means even if you have Fusion Strike energies or Double Turbo energy, you're still able to hit through Duraludon VMAX's Skyscraper ability. You're able to hit through Duraludon. Decidueye, I mean, it has a shred attack. It's really annoying. You can use Mew V Psychic Leap. Then if your own Mew VMAX is damaged and you don't want it to get knocked out, use Psychic Leap, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck, and it's just a way to not lose 3 prizes. It's kind of annoying, actually. Both Mew V and Mew VMAX for some reason have free retreat. You're weak to dark and you resist fighting. Meloetta is really what I think makes this deck over the top powerful, because Melodious Echo is an attack that your Mew VMAX can copy, but also just on its own for a Psychic and a colorless energy, you hit 70 damage times the number of Fusion Strike energies in play. Not even attached to this Pokemon, just in play, which I think is a mistake, but that's just me. How do we get all those Fusion energies in play? Well, we have cards like Elisa's Sparkle, where you can choose 2 of your Fusion Strike Pokemon in play and search a deck for a Fusion Strike energy and attach one to each of those Pokemon. Really annoying. And then you just attach one from the hand. There's 3 Fusion Strike energies. Even if you're going second, you have a basic 1 prize Pokemon that's going to be hitting for 210 damage. Oh, by the way, you have things like Choice Belt to increase that damage to 240. Oh, by the way, you have 4 Power Tablets, which can do an additional 120 damage, which means theoretically, if you drew absolutely stunningly, you can hit for 360 in a single turn, enough to knock out anything in the game in one hit with a single prize basic Pokemon on turn 2. It's pretty disgusting. But it's a real possibility. We have things like Cramomatics, where we can discard an item card from our hand, flip a coin. If heads, you search a deck for any card you want. Fog Crystal to help you find basic Pokemon, basic Psychic energies. That can get you your Meloetta, your Mew. You have Battle VIP Pass, which every time I play a Mew deck, somehow they have at least one in their hand. This list does run a Peony, where you can discard your hand and search your deck for 2 trainer cards. I kind of like it. You have a bunch of stadium cards, different stadium cards, so that you can continue to discard them or bump your own stadium so you can draw more cards. How are we drawing all those cards? We have Genesect V with the Fusion Strike system. Once during your turn, you draw cards until you have as many cards in your hand as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, which means if we have 6 Fusion Strike Pokemon in play and no cards in our hands, we can draw 6 cards. And if we have 3 Genesects in play, we can continue to dump cards from our hand, burn them, play them, put them, whatever it is we're doing, discard them, and just continue to draw more cards. I've seen plenty of Mew players draw over half of their deck on turn 2 because they hit those Battle VIP passes, they hit the item cards that they can discard or cram, they draw into more Genesects, they play them, and they just keep drawing and drawing and drawing, and it's like, oh my goodness. So the odds of you drawing into all those cards you need a Fusion Strike Energy, a Fog Crystal, and an Elisa Sparkle, and maybe an Escape Rope or a Switch or something like that. Like you need 4 cards to make this combo happen. It is not difficult at all to hit for 210 turn 2. You need a Meloetta if you don't start it, right? Let's just assume you don't even start Meloetta. You need a Meloetta, an Escape Rope or Switch. You need a Fusion Strike Energy, and you need an Elisa Sparkle. Well, you have Pokegear to help you find your Elisa Sparkle if you don't get into it. You have Fog Crystal to help you find your Meloettas. You have Ultra Balls and Quick Balls to help you find your Meloettas. I mean, in this list alone, there's 8, 10, 11, 13 outs to a Meloetta, not including flipping heads on Cramomatics. So that's pretty crazy. We have 4 outs to Elisa Sparkle, and then again, that's not including all the cards we're drawing with Genesect V, so the odds of us finding something is pretty high. I know I went on a little bit of a rant there, but it's true. Everything I said is very, very true, and it's very, very powerful, and I don't like it. Your biggest downfalls are going to be things like, honestly, Duraludon can be annoying, even though, yes, Mew VMAX does have a shred attack. You don't hit it for nearly as much as it hits you. You have Power Tablets, they're one-time use, you have Choice Spells, they have Tool Jammer, Tool Scrapper. They're hitting you 220, you're hitting 130. You have to 3-shot them, assuming you don't have any other damage modifiers. They're going to 2-shot you. So, something to consider. And that only works if you have another Mew VMAX in play. You have to have another Mew VMAX on the bench, or you have to have 2 Psychic Energies attached to it. So, easy to do because Fusion Strike Energies account for every type of energy, because why would they not? Also, Fusion Strike Energies prevent your opponent from using abilities on your opponent's Pokemon that has a Fusion Strike Energy attached to it, which means no Quick Shootings, no Glaring Zigzagoon, Headbutt Tantrums, no Umbreon VMAX, Dark Signals, just nothing. This deck has everything you could want. Supporter Energy Acceleration, Energy of every kind, Ability Prevention, it has Shred, it has Free Retreat, it has crazy search options, crazy draw, very powerful attacks, damage buffs. I mean, come on, it has every tool that you can possibly want in a deck. And it's one of the best decks in the game. Even still, even though it hasn't really won that many in-person tournaments yet. I know Natalie won the Brisbane Regionals with Mew. It hasn't been performing as dominantly as everyone kind of thought it would when we were first coming back to IRL play, but it's still an incredible pick, and it's still, I think a lot of people agree that if you're trying to get points, if you want to go to a tournament and get some championship points, or you want to, Mew is probably your best bet, and I would have to agree, despite my feelings towards it. It's just a really good deck, and it pains me to say it. So with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. So there you have it, 5 decks that you should really consider playing for an upcoming event, and some deck lists, and also some, the strategies behind the deck, why you might want to play them, all that kind of stuff. I hope that you let me know what decks you don't have to say what deck you're going to play at a tournament, because I know some people want to keep that a secret. If you want to share it, that's cool. But let me know what your thoughts are on these 5 decks at the very least. If you don't want to say what you're playing, I would love to hear what you have to think about this. I don't want to call it a tier list, but what this pseudo tier list is. And that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this a little informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment. We already talked about that. There's a Dragon Shield link. There's a Discord link. I didn't really mention that. You can become a member if you're interested. And yeah, I will see you next time.